So in many domains of our lives, especially those that are near and dear to our hearts, such as health, wealth, happiness, professional success, do we end up assuming more control than we actually have and hence fall prey to illusion of control with all its cost? And by recognizing where we don't have control, do we get better control? These are some of the ideas explored in this book that I recently co-authored with Spiros Markradakis and Robin Hogarth. Starting with God, Church of England and God's work. I don't know how many of you know this. In 2002, Church of England lost 400 million pounds, and in the current crisis, almost half their pensions are gone. If you look at the industrialized world, the numbers are mind-boggling, more than $5 trillion. The question is this a black swan, which by definition is a highly infrequent event with very disproportionately large consequences and something we don't even conceive of a priori? You look at some of this data, my answer to that is no, it has happened before. That's the current crisis. This is the bursting of the 1966 bubble. Before that, we had the Great Depression. Is this going to happen again? Answer is yes. Will it happen suddenly? The answer is yes. And are we going to be prepared? The answer is most likely no. You can see some of these quotes of a senior Chinese official who said financial markets are like champagne. If there are no bubbles, no one will drink them. Alan Greenspan pointing out that these things happen suddenly. And all these things have to do with human behavior. And one of the overarching psychological characteristics of human behavior is illusion of control, which is when we end up assuming more control than we actually have. There are things which depends on chance, but we end up assuming we control them, and hence we fall prey to that. This is the opposite psychological state of fatalism. So in evolutionary terms, human beings have placed a very high cost on fatalism. We don't like to assume that we don't have control when we actually do. But in trying to avoid that, we often go too far and we fall prey to illusion of control with all its cost. Now, it does not depend on whether we are rational, whether we are Mr. Intuition, or whether we are Miss Blink. No matter what decision-making process we use, no matter what thinking style we use, illusion of control does have an overarching impact on the way we think about uncertainty, the way we think about control, and so on. I'm going to show you a few examples. Here is one going back to the United States market, 1987 to 2000. When we look at something like this, one of the manifestations of illusion of control is we begin to see patterns, we extrapolate those patterns. That extrapolation goes into all kinds of decision making, such as risk management, and has lots of costs. For example, this is a book which came out in 1999 after seeing that pattern, talking about Dow 36,000. Just extrapolating the data, person made millions of dollars, high exposure. Someone else wrote a book, Dow 40,000. Same thing, CNBC interviews, and another person wrote Dow 100,000. Now, what is the cost of illusion of control? Here is one example. You can take any time window. I'm taking the one which is highly publicized, very well known, 1984 to 2002. You give up control, put all your money in a passive ETF, S&P 500. You make 13% per year. Average fund manager, about 9%. Average retail investor, active, about 3%. A little bit more sophisticated. How do you allocate your money across assets? Use one of the optimal portfolio theories. There are 14 of them, extremely well known. Some of them backed up by Nobel Prizes. Take any one of those theories, compare them with a simple 1/n rule, $100,000, 5 assets available, divide equally among 5 assets, rebalance once a year. Not only the 1/n rule, not only does it not underperform, it often does the best. Let's take another example, medicine. I don't know how many of you do annual health checkups, but there's growing evidence that those things are not very useful. Give you an example. Go to a developed country. What does the doctor tell you? Control your cholesterol, your blood pressure. Don't get too fat. Eat fruits and vegetables. Exercise. Don't smoke. Don't drink. And don't work in coal mines. Work in an office somewhere. Cholesterol is 240. What does it lead to? We take Lipitor. Blood pressure is high. We take Cozar. Often leads to overdiagnosis, overtreatment. And by trying to control, we actually end up losing control. So it's not about medicine is not useful. It's about overdiagnosis and overtreatment. It's about overdoing it. For example, the supplements and so on, where there's no substantive evidence that those have any impact. Now, there are several examples of this kind. The message is not that we should just put our hands up in the air and not do anything, but The message is that we should realize what we don't control and hence be better prepared for it. For example, by accepting what we control and what we don't control, we are much better off. We make an assessment, and once we make an assessment, we have to try and augment that uncertainty for the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. Thank you.
Neil, great. Thank you.